Good Friday, all you T-birds out there. Thank you for joining us today for our Friday Career Connection. My name's Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad and Online. We're super excited to have you join us for another Friday edition on this last Friday of January. We do not have snow here. Some of our people on the call would wish we had more snow, but um, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Cedar City. Thanks to all of you who have joined us today to learn more about how we advance our careers, how can we better prepare for the things that are coming with our careers. As we all know, careers aren't a linear activity. There's some ups and downs. And so our guest today, we're super excited to have Sam Allman join us today. Sam's got some wonderful experience. He's seen all kinds of things happen in a career. And so we're really excited to hear from him today. I'm not going to give you too much information about Sam. We're going to let him share his background with us. But Sam is an entrepreneur. He's also a former professor, and now he's a volunteer helping people build and develop careers. So, a great example of someone who's really reinvented himself several times over the years, and is really a Renaissance man in many ways in terms of his thinking, his study, his travel, and we're excited to hear from him today. So, Sam, we're going to turn the time over to you to share with us your journey, your career journey, and what you've learned in that, and then give us some advice on how we manage our career, especially in the age of AI. You've seen it all from no computers to AI now doing so many different things. So we'll turn it over to Sam. As always, if you can put your questions in the chat, we'll take those in about 12:30. Sam.
Well, thank you for having me, and I thank my granddaughter Emma for uh, pulling me in here. And I'm excited to talk with you. I love talking about my background. The reason I do is because it's been a joy for me, my journey, and I want to share that with you. As we start, I shared this with Tad at the start. I believe that your life's work is to find your life's work, and it doesn't matter when that happens. You can be 80 years old when it happens, but your goal is to find your life's work, whatever that is, which includes your passions, it matches your talent and everything else. So to give you my background, I came back from a mission. I decided to get married. Went work on. I had already been to a year and a half of school at UCLA. I went to Long Beach State University. At that time, it was Long Beach State College, and I was just walking around, and I decided I was going to major in microbiology, and my goal was possibly to be a dentist. I didn't know whether I'd do that, but I thought I was going to be a dentist. So I got a bachelor's degree in microbiology, and I love the study of human infections, and we learned about virology and microbiology, bacteriology, mycology, all of these things about microorganisms. And I thought maybe, well, I'd apply to dental school, but I didn't have a lot of money. I was married, and I applied one place. I networked with somebody I knew who taught. He taught at the USC, and so I networked with him, but I didn't do very well on the exam. So almost I ended up deciding to go to BYU to get a master's degree in microbiology. And at BYU, I was there 2 years, got a master's degree, and I studied the organism called Hansenula anomala, which is a yeast, and it creates ethyl acetate, and it was a really interesting study. But I wasn't really interested because I really liked infections and microorganisms that infected humans. And this was a microorganism, but it wasn't a human organism. So I ended up, after my master's degree, I went up to the University of Utah to work on a PhD in microbiology and biochemistry. And my PhD work was the scalded skin syndrome of infants. And scalded skin syndrome is caused by Staphylococcus aureus, which is a microbial, which is a microbe that basically causes skin infections, and it caused babies to look like they'd been thrown in a hot tub of water. And a lot of people were being convicted of being abusive to their children because these babies would have third-degree burns on their bodies. Well, the study found out that this bacteria had a virus. I don't need to go into this, but it was really interesting, and I was fascinated about it. I I spent 2 years on it. Had already had one research paper published. Um, I was 28 years old, had 4 children up to this point, and I went to my professor. I says, "I have a master's degree. I should be done in a year. I already have a publication, and in many schools, 1 or 2 publications, and I had enough research to publish another paper." And he looked at me and he said, "Sam, no, you have 5 more years." I said, "What do you mean I have 5 years? I've already got a master's degree and I should be able to graduate next year." He said, "No, you need 4 or 5 more years. You need a postdoc." And I had 5 kids. Now, to tell you a short story, to keep myself in school all this time through my graduate program and being married and having children, I laid carpet on the side. And my dad made me go with him when I was 8 years old to go lay carpet. And I used to complain all the time. I said, "Dad, why do I got to go lay carpet?" He says, "Because I get lonely without you." So I learned to lay carpet because my dad was lonely. At age 17, though, and I wasn't happy about that. But when I got married, I realized I had to not only take care of my education, but I also had to take care of my wife and my family, growing family. And so I started to sell carpet out of my student apartment at BYU. And I started to grow a little business. On Saturdays, I would go and I would hire the other students in married student housing, and they'd go help me lay carpet. So after my little conversation with my professor saying that I had 5 more years and I was basically thought I was done, I quit school and opened up a carpet store in Bountiful, Utah, 1971. I quit school, and everybody said to me, "Sam, you're a PhD student." I said, "Yeah, but I wasn't going to spend 5 more years making nothing and not taking care of my family. And I had a growing family." So I pivoted and I became an entrepreneur, and I opened up a carpet store, and I loved it. I love running my own business. I was in control, and I'd go in there and solve problems every day. And I'd look around and I'd say, this place would fall apart without me. But deep down inside, something was missing. I was hurting. I mean, I was hurting because I wasn't happy. And it was because I probably learned everything there was to know about running a carpet store. I ran it pretty well, but I had no business background. I didn't know how to read a financial statement, but I was really good with
Sometimes it
customers.
can be
That's good
approved
with,
to take the
pardon? Well, anyway, I was really good with customers, and so I was able to build a business, and customers would come back to me again and again, and the carpet store grew. So in about uh, 4 years after started to run the carpet store, I was not happy. Something inside of me was calling me. So I decided to run for mayor of my community. I ran for mayor, lost by 17 votes. I was 32 years old, ran for mayor because I wasn't happy with the things in my community. But the mayor and I, who I ran against, by the way, I won the primaries, but I knocked out the incumbent. But most of the people in this small West Bountiful community said, "Who's this 32-year-old to come in this city to tell us how to run our city?" And they voted a 70-year-old man in my place. But that mayor who beat me by 17 votes, he and I got along well, and he made me a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which I learned how to do. So 2 years later, after being on the Planning and Zoning Commission for 2 years, I ran for city council, and I ended up running for 2 terms on the city council. And why did I do that? Because something was missing inside. I think it was because I learned all I could do about the carpet business, and there was no variety anymore. I loved my customers, and I really felt like this place would fall apart without me. And so I left and turned it over to my brothers. And of course, it did, it's still just fine. It's still open. And my brother's 75 years old and he still runs it. And so it did just fine without me, which was very disappointing. But I ended up going to work for another carpet company and I became a salesman who would drive around and call on carpet stores and help them with their businesses. I'd try to sell them carpet. So I worked for a distributor of carpet, and I set a goal that I was going to be the best salesman in that company. And my goal was to become a salesman. I set some goals right then. I'd become a good salesman, and then I would become a manager and I would become a leader. And I said, in 5 years, I'm going to be a manager. So during those 5 years, I listened to tapes. I listened to motivational tapes every day, because I would drive around calling on accounts. I'd have all this downtime. Don't waste downtime. I tell people I could listen to tapes, and I listened to tapes, and I listened to Zig Ziglar, and I listened to all these Earl Nightingale. These are all names you would know, but these are these old motivational speaker days, and that motivational speaking connected with me. I had an affinity for it. I loved it. Every time I turned on the tape, I'd get so excited and I would start dreaming. And I dream about my future. And I said, 5 years, I'm going to be a manager. Well, in 5 years, I was the number one salesman in the history of the company I was working for in Salt Lake City. And my manager knew that I wanted to become a manager. And I decided I had to leave the company I was with because I would never be a manager at that company, because my manager was a good manager and he was part of the company. And so I had to leave, and I ended up going to work for a national carpet mill. And I was the same territory manager. I had the state of Idaho, Nevada, Wyoming. I'd drive all around these states, listen to tapes, and sell people. And I would continue my studies about learning to be a manager. Well, it took me, instead of 5 years to become a manager, it took me 7. In 7 years, I got to tell you this story, and I just believe in this so much. I applied for the new sales manager's job in California, and I was the number one salesman for the company in Utah, Idaho, the West Coast. As the number one guy, and I didn't get hired. And I'm laying in bed with my wife, and I said, "Honey, they hired someone else." I said, "I know, that was my job. That was my job. I was supposed to get that job." Well, 2 weeks later, I got the job because the guy they hired, the guy they hired demanded more money, and they ended up coming back to me. And you know why they came back to me? Because they had called me earlier and they said, Sam, you're a good guy and you're a good salesman, but you don't know those California dealers. They'll eat you alive. You're just a good little Mormon boy, and they're just going to eat you alive in Southern California, Northern California. And I said, "Yeah, but I grew up in California. I'm a Californian. I mean, I love Utah. All my parents came from Utah, but I grew up in the hood, South Central LA. I really did grow up in the hood. I was there during the Watts riots. My ward was on the corner where the Watts riots started in 1966, my ward house." So they gave me the job. And I turned to my wife. I said, "Okay, my next goal in 5 years, we're going to move to Georgia." And because I'd had all these tapes, I decided I needed, and I was really passionate about teaching because that's what I was doing. I was teaching med students at the University of Utah, their basic microbiology. I was in the meds classes with them because I was teaching about scalded skin syndrome. I really wanted to end up teaching. And I said, "We don't have a company trainer." So I said, "Honey, in 5 years, I'm going to move to Georgia and we're going to be the company trainer." She says, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "I have no clue. I have no clue how I'm going to do it. But let me tell you, when you set a goal and then you immerse yourself in information, in the middle of the night, you'll get ideas and things will come to you because you have a goal and your vision is focused on the future and you know where you want to go, but you don't know how you're going to get there. I do believe, and sometimes you just don't know how you're going to do it. So one day I had a sales team of 7 guys. I had Northern California, and we lived in Antioch, California. And so my office was in San Francisco, and I had that area, and I'd travel all around Northern California. And one day we went to a convention in Reno. And see, at this time, I wanted to be a trainer. I wanted to be a speaker on sales training, and I wanted to motivate people because I had that affinity because of those tapes I'd been listening to. And so we got to the convention, and in the middle of the convention, my wife's sitting with me at the convention, and a motivational speaker speaking. And I turned to my wife and I said, "Honey, someday I'm going to do that." She says, "How are you going to do it?" I said, I have no idea, but I'm going to do it. She says, "Well, you said you're going to do it. Why don't you do something about it?" So in the middle of the night, I got an idea and I started pestering people. Needless to say, I had 3 or 4 people. I did all kinds of things to try to get connections. I network and all kinds of things. And the goal was to speak at the convention next year. I said, "Honey, next year, I'm going to speak at this convention." She said, "How are you going to do that?" I said, "I have no idea, but I'm going to do it." And so the story is, of course, I couldn't do it. They weren't going to have me. They were booked up. And when I called them the first time, it was a week after the last time I called them up. I said, "I'd like to speak at the convention." They said, "Who are you?" I said, "Sam Allman." And I said, "Who are you? I've never heard of you." I said, I was at the convention this last time." And he says, "Oh, you're the guy with the cute wife." I said, "Yeah, that was me." And I didn't have any reputation at all. He says, "You're a speaker?" I go, "Yeah. What do you need?" And he says, I said, I'm sorry, we're already booked up." So you ready for this? 6 weeks before the convention started, I get a call on the phone, and it's the head of the convention. He says, "Mr. Allman, we'd like you to speak at the convention." I said, "I thought you told me you were all booked up." He says, "We were, but the other speaker we had booked had a heart attack, and his doctor said he couldn't come and wonder if you'd fill in." I said, "I don't know. I'm kind of busy. Let me look at my schedule." And of course, I said, "Sure. What do you want me to speak about?" And he goes, "I don't know. What do you got?" I said, "Well, I didn't even have a speech." What was it? I took the next 6 weeks thinking about. And by the way, these were all entrepreneurs that were coming to this convention. They were entrepreneurs in the floor covering business. So I was familiar with the floor covering business. I could talk about the floor covering business. I could talk about running a store. I could talk about selling to people. I could talk about managing and all those kind of things. And I gave my first speech. And guess what happened? You're right. Nothing. I thought people would call. They came after me and said how wonderful I was, but nobody said anything. So guess what I had to do? I had to go. I had to think of something else to do. I got one thing. I got one speech. One speech doesn't make it. So what I did, I started calling people. I called a friend. I said, "Hey," and he was a member of the Abbey Group, which is a floor covering co-op kind of deal. And I said, "Otis," I said, did you like my speech at the Reno convention?" He says, "Yeah, I really did." I says, "Don't you think I ought to speak at the Abbey convention?" He says, "Yeah, I think you ought to." I says, "How can we do that?" And he says, "Well, I'll call him." And of course, I got some speeches because of that. And let me just say that no one kept, you want people to save you and bring you to a rescue, you have to be proactive in your career. You have to go for it. You have to figure out ways to get things you want and how to get there. And sometimes you have to pivot. Needless to say, and I'm going to shorten this up because I'm going too long with this. Needless to say, I was finally made vice president of training for Mohawk Industries, the largest flooring manufacturer in Georgia. And in 1993, 5 years after I moved to California. By the way, it took me 4 years, 4 years and 11 months. Remember, I told you I had 5 years I was going to move to Georgia. I moved to Georgia in 4 years and 11 months. My goal was 5 years. My goals got more precise. And I was made vice president of training. And to kind of give you the rest of the story really quickly, within a year of becoming vice president of training for Mohawk, I left Mohawk to start my own training and consulting company. Mohawk became my first customer. I had a contract with Mohawk for 15 years. I ran Mohawk University as president of Allman Consulting and Training. Even though everyone thought I was an employee of Mohawk, I left Mohawk to be a contractor, and I had trainers working for me. I had up to 10 trainers working for me. I've written hundreds of training programs, from leadership to reading financial statements. And remember, my background's microbiology and biochemistry. And I had to learn about those things. I only knew how to run a carpet store financially if there was money in the bank. I didn't know anything about reading a financial statement, because that career taught me how to be a businessman. And I never got very good at it until I started to teach it. The best way to learn something is to teach it. So in 2008, when we had the downtime, Mohawk decided they didn't want to do any more training. My company dissolved. And I was speaker. I was the speaker. I was hired. I was doing consulting, but I was basically a one-man show, and got to live my final dream was my wife was an admin assistant at Kennesaw State University. And at Kennesaw State, I started to teach. I started to be a part-time professor, and then eventually became full-time and taught leadership and taught helping seniors to transition from the workplace. My belief, and I work with my students, I've told you this at the beginning, is your life goal is to find your life's work. Your life's work is to find your life's goal. Life's work. I mean, but this is what I believe. Your learning doesn't stop when you end your college career, when you get your degree. My students came to me many times and said, I vow I'm never going to pick up a book again. Guess what? Your learning's just beginning. Your learning is to learn about you, your preferences, your God-given talents, your gifts, everything there is about you. I have found that the happiest people learn all their life. The happiest people find purpose in that learning and purpose to serve. And learning and purpose will make your lives happy. Happiness is a decision, and it comes from your deciding to continue to grow forever, continue to learn, and continue to find purpose in what you're doing. And anyway, I've already talked too long, and I'll end with that, Tad, and make whatever questions you may have.
That's great. You're also a master storyteller, so that's fantastic. We have a bunch of questions in the chat, so we're gonna go to those. Spencer, and thank you, Spencer, for that question. He's curious about what was the topic of your speech at that convention. Was it motivational or was it carpet industry specific?
No, it was both. It was motivational mostly because that's me, but it was called Ride the Waves of Chaos. And it was because at that time, the floor covering industry was going through most guys say, if I can lay carpet, I can run a carpet store. Well, they found out it won't happen. So there were 350 carpet mills, and it was being bought up, and there were going to be the goal. The future looked like there was going to be three major players, from 200 to 300 carpet mills down to three major players. Mohawk purchased, I can't imagine, maybe 20 different mills, and combined, that's how they became a $10 billion company. So it was focused on being flexible. So the real key here is when things change, that you're flexible, persistent in your goals, but sometimes your goals have to change because sometimes your goals won't work. So flexible in changing your goals, but persistent and grit to keep going when you should be persistent, and then flexible when you should change or pivot and go somewhere else. And I'm seeing that today with all the guys I'm trying to help find technology jobs because AI is taking them out. 10 years ago, everybody wanted to be AI. Well, I mean, everybody wanted to be in tech. They wanted to do coding. They wanted, but today with AI, those jobs are drying up. So it's time for them to flex, pivot, and find something else or some other direction for them to go.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to follow up with my own personal question. Most people are scared to death to speak in public, especially in front of large crowds. Where did you find the confidence to not only deliver the speech, but want to deliver the speech? Is that something that's inherent in you, or your confidence, or is that
Uh,
something you had to develop?
no, it's something I had to develop, but let me just say this. I had an affinity for it. I remember I ran for student body president in high school. I was so scared my leg was shaking. I was almost afraid I was wetting my pants. That's why I wore a dark blue suit, just in case I did, no one would notice. But I was so scared. But the more you practice, I'm going to just emphasize this to you too. As you do interviews to look for jobs, practice your interviews. Make sure you do your research to find out what they want you to talk about, and then write them down, practice it so you can story tell it as much as you can and be as natural telling it as possible.
Good advice. Thank you. All right, the next question comes from Taylor. What are the top skills professionals should focus on developing today?
Influence, the influence. Let me just say that selling is a master skill, but selling is everything. I I believe this. If you learn to be a great salesman, you can talk to anybody. The problem I'm seeing with young people today is they've been stuck in a room working in front of their computer or doing social media, which is fake. You've got to learn to practice talking as strangers. How do you talk to someone who you don't know? Practice in the line at the grocery store. Practice talking to people and connecting with people. Your ability to connect with people is as important a skill as anything you learn. And that means to influence them. That means to listen to them. That means to develop empathy. Empathy is the number one characteristic of a peak performing salesperson. The ability to listen and not talk about yourself and this is the joy for me to kind of talk about myself here, but the really powerful people listen more than they talk. My rule of thumb, I got 2 rules of thumb. Here's the 2 rules of thumb when you're talking to someone. Never talk it longer than 30 seconds without asking a question. Rule number 2. You ready for rule number 2? I just forgot. Well, let's see. It's my age show coming up. Rule number 2 is never say a thing that you can find a way to ask. So just let me tell you one more story. I went to a party one night and I was talking to this guy, and he was a different guy, but I pretended he loved to talk about himself. So I started asking him questions. And he talked all night about himself. He was talking on, and I pretended that everything he said was fascinating. I go, tell me more. What else? And he would go on and on. And at the end of the evening, I went up to him and I said, I don't remember his name, George. It was really a pleasure talking to you. And he looked at me and he goes, I said, Sam. He didn't even know my name. He said, Sam, you're the most interesting person I've ever met. How much did he know about me? Nothing. If you want to be interesting, be interested. And this is the skill that's most important, because then if you have this ability to influence and connect with others, you can lead them, you can influence them, they can help you, and networking will help you as long as you're helping them. So I think that's one of the key skills besides this ability to leadership, because getting your daughter to room is selling, clean your room is selling. Having a romantic evening with your spouse is selling. Everything is selling. Master the skills of selling. You'll always have a job, and you can get anything else in this world you want.
Yeah, that sound bite's probably going to go viral when we post it on social media. So great. That's so true. All right. Tate has a question, and I think this is a good one. What were the biggest things that help you overcome rejection? You seem to be immune to uh, rejection. You don't let it stop you.
No, you just have to immerse yourself in positive thinking. I mean, you really do. You can focus on what you don't want, but if you focus, see, that's why the scripture, without vision, the people perished. You got to visualize on your future. The very best, and Harvard University proved this out, that the most successful in life think, have a vision of their future. They think 3 or 4 moves ahead. So are you thinking 3 or 4 moves ahead, or are you thinking only in the moment? And I think this is the great paradox of life. I've been working on a book for a while that I probably never published, but I would like to publish it. And that is this: the opposite of a true statement is a false statement. The opposite of a true principle may very well be another true principle. So we have to deal with opposites. Should you live in the moment where you are, where you face disappointment, depression, or should you live in the future? Well, the answer is you've got to figure out how to do both. You've got to live in the moment and enjoy the moment. Your life should be, there needs to be opposition in all things. Live in the moment, but at the same time, have a view of your future that is compelling. Your goal should be compelling. I call it a BHAG, and you've probably heard of BHAG. I know Tad has. You know what a BHAG is? A big, hairy, audacious goal. What is your big, hairy, audacious goal? And whatever that is, be able to visualize it and see it. I used to visualize myself standing before an audience of 1,000 people and getting energized by that. And it wasn't happening as fast as I want. And my wife says, you keep talking about it. When are you going to do something about it? And so once you start seeing that future, your mind will give you little steps if you break your goals down into small pieces like I did. Okay. Zig Ziglar was selling pots and pans door to door when he started to become a world famous speaker. So I decided I'm going to be a good salesman. That was my first thing. Then I was going to be a good manager. I was going to learn to lead. I was going to take a team and I'm going to grow that business. I'm going to learn everything I could about leadership. And that helped me talk about when I was teaching at Kennesaw State University, helped me teaching the leadership classes like leading in groups and foundations of leadership and leading in a multicultural world. So break it down into small steps when you can get those small goals that will move you forward. And so my goal was become a good sales manager, then become the company trainer, then become a motivational speaker. And my final goals where I really wanted to end up anyway, and I wanted to teach at a university, and I got to do that. I was almost 80 before I got to leave the university, but I got to do it. It was kind of like my final one. I didn't know that's what I wanted, maybe when I wanted in the 80s or 90s, but it was when I was terminating my career. I said my career would just be cool if I could just finish at a university, and I would have a little bit of credibility other than my own thinking that I'm good, you know.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, Bob Dylan said something similar. If you visualize that, it will happen. So I'm paraphrasing, but all right.
I
Thank
do
you for
believe
that.
in it.
This next question came from Jackson. Sam, what would you suggest for someone who's really interested in starting their own business or working for themselves? What advice would you have, and what skills do you think are most important for being an entrepreneur?
Well, that's a great question. Let me encourage you all, if you haven't read the book, The Startup of You by the guys that developed LinkedIn, and that'll help you talk about entrepreneurs. I really wasn't an entrepreneur. See, a true entrepreneur builds a business to sell it. I built a business so I could do it. See, if you're an entrepreneur, you build a business so it works without you. I built businesses that would only work with me. I needed to be there. I wanted to do the job. And so I knew that when I opened my Allman Consulting and Training. So I hired a CFO, I hired a vice president, and I wanted them to do the things because I wanted to speak and I wanted to write. And they didn't take me where I wanted to go because I was still too much controlling it. But if you really want to be an entrepreneur, read The Entrepreneurial Myth by Michael Gerber. It's a great book about the difference between owning a job versus being an entrepreneur. Many people own a job. I owned a carpet store. I owned a job. I put 6 days a week in it. You ask my kids, I was never there. See, an entrepreneur works on the business so it will run without him. And his goal is to own the business. A guy who wants to own a job, and that's okay. I believe it's okay to own a job. If that's your goal and you want to do it, and this world is made by many people who own jobs and they're perfectly happy to pass them to their kids or have it end when they're done. But the difference between an entrepreneur is you work on the job instead of in the job, and there's two different approaches to it. I don't.
Yep. Good point. Good point. All right. Thank you for that. Next question is related to goals. You seem to be really good at setting goals and accomplishing them. This person is asking, how did you decide which goals to pursue? Is it something you felt inside? Is it something that stimulated your intellect? And then what made you stick with those goals? Because it sounded like you were very persistent. What helped you stay motivated?
Let me start by telling the story how I got to be a goal setter. I got off my mission, got married. It's my first semester of school from my mission. I was married the day I started school, basically. Right after I got off my mission, got married, started school. And I remember I was at UCLA for a year and a half. I did not do well at UCLA. Um, I passed. Well, the first 3 weeks after my mission, I got my first midterms back. Maybe it's 4 weeks, I don't remember. But I got my midterms back and I flunked every midterm. Zoology, political science, no, philosophy. Anyway, whatever they were, I flunked. I pretty much did not do well in any of them. And my goal was to be a dentist. How was that? I couldn't get in dentist school with those kind of grades. I was really depressed. So I went to a fireside that night for young marrieds in our state. They had one. And a doctor came by the name of Dr. Anderson. He was a psychology professor. And he taught me how to set goals. He taught me how to do an affirmation. So this is what he taught me to do. You write the goal down. So I wrote the goal down. I said, I want to be an A student. He says, not the way you write it down. You write it down, I am an A student. So on a 3x5 card, I put down, I am an A student. And I put on a 3x5 card and put it in my pocket as I drove over my Volkswagen from San Pedro to Long Beach State. And as I was driving over the bridge every day of San Pedro Harbor, I would visualize myself being handed to visualize my teacher, my professor, handing me my grade in my zoology class. He says, Sam, you got an A. And I would visualize it. And it would excite me. And I would get excited as I was going over there. So guess what happened? It's not because I became smarter. I became more focused. So I started acting like an A student. And every day I would visualize the result. Without vision, people perish. So I would see it in my mind's eye. And the definition of vision is this: the clearest possible mental picture of a future desired result. So I would visualize getting an A. And guess what happened on the next midterm? I got an A. I got the highest grade in the class in my philosophy class. I got A's. I was a straight A student almost the rest of my career. On my hand, maybe I got a couple B pluses, maybe in graduate school, maybe in the biochemistry of nucleic acids. I don't remember, but I also got straight A's, and that goal setting for school changed my life. I've been an avid goal setter the rest of my life, except there were moments where I would get lazy and not have a goal, and and uh, and I have not accomplished every goal. Some things I did not accomplish like I wanted to, but every single goal that I stuck to, every single one that I followed the system, visualizing it daily, feeling the emotion and the passion of experiencing it in my mind's eye, every single goal came true. Every single one.
Great, great. And that kind of, you've answered the second question, what were the tools or visuals that you used to stay focused? So you've shared that with us as well. All right, next question comes from Jonathan. Jonathan, thank you for the question. As a lifelong learner, Sam, what are your favorite books to read for personal leadership development? Do you have it?
Personal leadership development. Okay, I'm an old timer. I think one of the best books ever written is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People because it gives you personal things to do, learning to be proactive, and all those seven habits make a huge difference. I love psycho-cybernetics. I love uh, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It opened my eyes. Atomic Habits. I can go on and on. Ask Emma how many books I have. My my library is so huge. And you know what? I like to read novels, but I don't read very many. I read personal development books because they speak to me. They get me excited. When I'm depressed, I pick up books. Tony Robbins and his books, the Power Book, the first one he wrote, opened my eyes to so many things. I have learned so much about motivation. My belief is this, is that the most powerful characteristic you can have to be successful, you ready for this, is adaptable self-awareness. That means to know exactly what you need to do to adapt, whether you adapt to what doesn't work anymore for you personally, whether you are flexible in your goals, because sometimes you have to pivot your goals. Sometimes your goal is to do something they won't pay you for anymore. So you got to be flexible. Persistence is important, but the ability to know yourself, what you need to do to change. The whole world wants to blame everyone else. The three self-defeating behaviors are. I told you seminars breaking out, Tab. The three self-defeating behaviors are, first one is blame. Anyone who blames anyone else for their problems hands them control. When you hand anyone else control, you become a victim. You want to be a victim? You also call that roadkill. Number two is shame. Shame is where you beat yourself up. Blame, shame. Shame is where you say, well, it's just the way I am. I can't change. If you say that, you're a victim to yourself. That means you won't change because shame says, well, you beat yourself up and say, well, I can't do that because it's just the way I am. How many of you ever said that? Well, it's just the way I am. It means you won't change. And the third thing is justify. Blame, shame, and justify. Well, we would have won, but it started to rain. Oh, only on your team? See, you can hand people control, but the single greatest characteristic is to take action for yourself, and you've got to take it because you're the one that's got to change. As Gandhi says, if you want to change the world, change yourself, and that's where self-awareness comes in. Do AI and ask them about what's the most important characteristic of success, and AI will tell you or at least the AIs I've gone with them have said adaptable self-awareness.
Okay. And this next question is related to that. So you've done a lot of pivoting, right? From potential dentist to entrepreneur to professor. How do you coach your clients in finding that new direction? Like someone who wants to pivot from away from a particular area, what do you advise in making those pivots and reinventing yourself?
Just try lots of things. Just go on, go on, go on an adventure. An adventure is self-discovery. Just try new things. Go test things. Do things that find out that you have an attraction for. Do things that you have skills for. You can't isolate yourself and be stuck in a room. Go ask people. Go connect with people. Go talk to people about different jobs. The goal is to never be satisfied. My mother said to me, Sam, you're just never satisfied. And maybe it's that drive in me that and and if you can find this dream early in your career, more power to you. But like I said, uh, the world, you just don't know what you don't know. And that's the problem. Immerse yourself in as much information as you can. Read all the best books you can. Become a reader. Read everything you can read. Uh, I can go on and on with the books that have, because I look at my bookshelf here and emotional intelligence. I found the best book, one of the best books I ever read. I got for $1 in a Kmart bargain book thing. It was Emotional Intelligence. That's an incredible book to learn about emotional intelligence and how you can improve it. And that EQ is more important than IQ. It doesn't matter how smart you are; it's how you adjust. And EQ is your ability to adjust to life and people and change and move and become a changeling yourself because you'll never know unless you try it.
Yeah. I think sometimes we put pressure on ourselves and like we have to know exactly what we want to do at this period of life. And that's how I used to think. I remember when I was in MBA school, I'm like, I got to know exactly what I'm going to be. And then a speaker came and said, try a few things, give yourself till you're 35 to figure out what you want to do. And that freed me. That freed me to like, I am going to try a few different things and that's okay. I didn't want to be perceived as flaky, but as long as I had a timeline, that was a very freeing thing for me. And I love how you've tried different things and you've been successful at them.
Yeah,
Uh,
I didn't tell you about the other businesses that failed, but
right, right. So there's a follow-up question with that comment from Christy. Christy, thanks for joining us and thanks for your question. So when you did pivot, how did you get other people to see you as an expert in that area? So when you were wanting to be the featured speaker at this convention, um, what was it that helped you be seen as the expert enough to them to have confidence in you that you could deliver a good keynote speech at a conference?
well, one of the things I do believe in the law of authority. The law of authority states that if you're perceived an expert, you'll be able to influence other people. That's why I quote lots of books. I use powerful quotes. Uh, I am not smart, but I'm well read, and knowing that I'm well read, people and I share ideas and so forth. I don't think it happens quickly. Sometimes, if you want to work to be an expert, this is what I do know. You can be an expert by immersing yourself in a subject, just focusing on that subject for a year. And it's easy to become an expert today. You just have to immerse yourself in it. And by the way, when you immerse yourself in that knowledge, then your mind is given material that will give you ideas to move you to next levels. So you can't you got to use your mind and it will work for you, but you got to give it information. So let me just repeat what the president of Karastan Industries said to me when I was trying to help his company grow. He said to me, he said, Sam, the best employees that I have are students of the game. Be a student of whatever game you're in. And I think That's what will help you become an expert, because it doesn't take you long to surpass everybody else that doesn't put in the effort to do it.
Yeah, so true. Okay, we've just got a few minutes left. This one is my question. What is the value of networks and relationships in building a career? It seems like you've been successful in that, but is there one or two things that you would recommend, especially for someone who might be introverted? How do you develop those relationships and networks that allow you to help others as well as others to help you to build a career, not only for a career for money, but you're a volunteer now. How have those relationships and networks impacted your career growth, and how do you do it?
Oh, well, networking is really key. Uh, there's a really good book that I recommend that you read. It's called Dig Your Well Before You Get Thirsty. You may think that networking is really a job finding kind of thing, but actually networking is a lifelong thing. It should be a lifelong thing. Yeah, if you're thrown in jail, right, you can't call your best friend because usually your best friend is with you. You need associates, you need friends. I have friends all over I've been in every state. I have friends in all over the United States. And if I need them, I can call them. But here's the key: be a generous person. Be person willing to listen to them. Become a listener and listen to their problems and talk about their problems, not about yours. Eventually it'll get to yours. So listen, learn to develop relationships, and not, they don't have to be your best friends. They just have to be associates that you have that you can call and touch base with. And if you're generous with them, with your compliments, with your praise, with your helping if they need help. Uh, Let me just tell you how I built my carpet business, calling on my customers. I became the number one salesman in the second company I was with as well, because I did one thing. I did things no one else did. I served. Become a server of people, and you will find power in your giving. The more you give, the more you'll get. People don't care how much you know, as Zig Ziglar says, until they know how much you care. And caring comes by learning to love. And I want to leave you with, or leave this last, maybe though, if you haven't read the five love languages, uh, learn the five love languages. If you want to connect with people, the five things that you can do. Number one, you can serve them acts of service. Number two, you can give them gifts. Okay, number two, you can use words of affirmation, use kind words for them. Number three, quality time. Quality time is focused listening. And the final one is touch. Whether you believe it or not, touch is powerful. That means good, firm handshake, learning to do that. A hug when you see them sometimes. When you make people feel loved, they will be attracted to you. You carry that charisma. And so I suggest you be a lover. Again, those five things. Use those five things on everyone you meet. They'll be attracted to you because it's how you make them feel when you're with them. So if you make people feel better, and Mother Teresa said it best. She said, never allow anyone to come into your presence without them leaving feeling better for having been with you. That's the key to getting people to want to help you, is how you make them feel when you're with them. And it takes those love skills to do that.
All right. Well, Sam, thank you. You've certainly done that for us today. I think you've made us feel inspired and fired up and wanting to be better and do better. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your example. I think we all want to be like you.
Oh, be like you.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was great
T-Birds,
to meet
thanks
you.
for joining us today. Next week, our guest is Josh Gardner. He works in the mental health field, and I think he'll be really interesting. So I hope you join us next Thursday, same time, same bat time, same bat channel, noon, and we'll see you there. Sam, have a great weekend. We hope to meet you in person. So when you come, take Emma to lunch next time, stop in, and we want to say hi.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Wonderful.